Hi, Dr. Renzi. I feel like I've been staring at my computer screen nonstop for the past 3 hours, but I really wanted to get this reflection done, so I figured I would use the format that you and Dr. Kruger-Ross had me use in SED 501. So here's a vlog response. This is in response to the prompt, how do you want your classroom to be run and what problems do you expect to encounter? I've been thinking a lot, as you know, I'm in the process of moving, so right now I've been having to do so much, just dealing with like systems, calling to set up the Wi-Fi and to set up the electric and to, pay the trash bill and figure out the water and, coordinate. What I had to do today was I had to figure out a way to coordinate with my bank, with a third party that my landlord uses to pull like the rent money. And I walked in there just given how much I've been doing, and I just feel like I've been hitting, I swear this will relate back to the prompt, I feel like I was hitting a roadblock after like every turn, and by the time I walked into the bank to get this, specific task done, in my head I was like, I already know how this is gonna go. Like, I have this list of specific instructions. I had my landlord on the phone. He conferenced in the third party, so we had a rep to talk to as I was talking with the bank. And even with all of those factors that, I made sure I had to like try to mitigate things from going wrong, still after an hour and a half, it just wasted my time. They told me there was nothing they could do, threw a bunch of jargon at me that I didn't understand, and I left feeling pretty angry and frustrated. But what I was reflecting on with that experience is, how I walked in, I kind of just had this like intuitive feeling that, this system, like, this is not going to be for the benefit of me. Like, I've just seen how this plays out, and I just have a feeling it's not going to play out, in my favor. I feel like that's how a lot of kids come into the classroom. I've been reflecting on systems, and it's one of my personal beliefs that oftentimes with systems, the larger they are, the more inefficient they become, and also the more contrary to their own, like their original function they sometimes become too. And I feel like education, can be hit or miss like that. I feel like there are certain I feel like there's so many classrooms I've walked into, and I'd actually say there are more that I walked into that were, I felt like, were really awesome. I loved my high school experience. My middle school experience was okay, but high school was awesome. I had phenomenal teachers. But there were many classes that I did take that I walked into where I kind of had that same gut feeling that I did when I walked into the bank, where I was like, I just feel like whatever is happening in here, they're just checking off their boxes and what they're supposed to do. I don't feel like anything is really going to be for the benefit of me, or that like my actual needs are really going to be taken into account here. And like, it's ultimately just going to result in, my time being wasted and, an outcome, that I didn't really want. So with that in mind, I want like my classroom to be like obviously opposite to that. I want students to walk into my classroom and to feel that it is fluid, that it is dynamic, and that it is, of course, it's, even though I'm working with a group, I still want to be very individual, and instruction, instruction to feel very individually tailored. And actually the activity that we did at the end of SED 502, where you had us do that lesson plan, really was helpful and like showed me how much thought really needs to go into implementing, the theory that we've been working with, UDL. You think that, all right, yeah, I know how to do that. But then when I was actually faced with a bunch of, Section 504 plans and IEPs and just students that had preferences, that it actually took a huge amount of effort just to come up with one lesson plan for that. And that wasn't even its execution, or even making the materials. It took me hours just to do the plan part of that. So obviously that's, even I really want to be individually tailored, but I know one of the issues I'm going to run into is just time. There's only so much time that I'll be able to prep for everything. So that's definitely like an anxiety I have in executing that. Another element of my classroom, or I guess I'd say like some specific examples where like I would like it to be like individually tailored. I had one Latin teacher that had something she called equus pars. It was a Latin teacher that just means small horse. And if we were ever having a bad day, we could go up and ask for equus pars, no questions asked. She would hand us this like little stuffed horse, and we would put it on her desk, and it just meant that we weren't allowed to be called on for that day. And she told us, she's like, there's no limit to the amount of time that you take equus pars and use it. All I ask is that you be responsible and you only use it when you need to use it. And people in my class really did respect, you know, the proper use of Equus Pars, and it was really nice just to know that I had that resource whenever I needed it. And so and also given that I am a very high energy person, I can totally understand that I'm probably gonna have many students who like I might just be too much for. So I kind of would like to do like my own Equus Pars as like first a homage to my magistra, that teacher that did that. And yeah, I feel like it would just, you know, give students the opportunity to regulate. I also want just a space in my room, obviously still, you know, within eyesight so I can monitor it, but a space that's, you know, comfortable, maybe has some more like incandescent lighting, you know. I'm thinking of like a carpet, like a little lamp, like a shelf with some books on it, and then like 1 or 2 seats, and that would just be like a nice area in the back of the room where if, you know, a student is finding themselves unregulated, they can go back there and re-regulate. So that's an example of how I wanted, you know, individually tailor things. I also had another teacher in high school who, and I actually used this for my final paper for SED 501, she would give us a rubric that was, you know, 3 by 3, and each column appealed to a different type of learner. So the first column would have been just for linguistic, you know, kind of traditional, you know, learners. That was just prompts that you would normally find in like a school setting. The second one was for more kinesthetic learners. And then the final one was just like more creative prompts. And the deal was she would give us one each semester. We'd have to complete 3 projects, and we could pick one prompt from each column. So we still had to experiment with all the different types, but it at least gave us a lot of agency in like which projects we did and when we did them too. So I really would like to utilize that and implement that in my classroom to really aid in like giving my students more agency. Again, the time aspect of that, I know will take a lot of time to be able to prep for all of that, and also just practice too, and just experimenting with, you know, how much agency can I give students, how much can I trust them with, how much, you know, how much guidance do I have to offer. That really will just be a kind of not stop and go. Just trial and error process. So that's what I've been kind of thinking on in terms of my classroom. And then the final, I'm at 7 minutes, so I'll wrap it up. But the final element that I would really like to have as a part of my classroom is obviously everything we talked about with the K book, Not Light But Fire, being able to have conversations, not just about racial inequity, but just inequality and inequity across the board, and talking about our positionalities and how that informs our perspective and others' perspectives of us. One thing that I was thinking, this is kind of just like a sidetrack, but no, not really. One thing I was thinking of that I would really love to do, I would love to do like a mini series of lessons or a project. I'm not sure exactly what I want to do, but I know the purpose of it. I want it to be for students to learn more about how the public education system works and just how their education works and how decisions get made, who makes these decisions, why are these decisions made. I want them to, because I feel like oftentimes we are a part of these systems, but we don't know how they work. You know, when I was at the bank today and they were throwing all that jargon at me, expecting me to know it, and I had no idea how none of it worked, and yet I've been with this bank for 5 years. I should know how these things work, but I don't. And I frankly had the idea that the rep who was talking to me didn't really get how it worked either. And not knowing how something works is really disempowering. So I really want to make sure that I equip my students in my classroom with the knowledge of, you know, this is how your education works, this is how it's funded, this is how decisions are made. So that way they can, you know, I can empower them and they can have more of a say in their education. And, you know, just understanding, how that system works. So that's kind of what I was thinking about today. Still refining a lot. I think a lot of how I want to run my classroom will develop more once I'm very excited to see how it develops as I'm student teaching, because I feel like I have a bunch of theory, but when it comes to application, it looks completely different. I mean, I just saw that with that final lesson plan that we did. So I'm sure when I'm in an actual classroom and implementing things and seeing, you know, what blows up in my face and like what goes well, will be very interesting to see. So yeah, those are all my thoughts on it for right now, and thanks for listening. I'm sorry, this is 10 minutes. I took like 4 different videos, and this was I really tried to make it concise, but yeah, thanks for watching, Dr. Enzi.